Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. I am very happy to be here today because I have yet another Let's Care Live conversation series interview happening now with none other as you can see in this, I don't know how to point. Oh, wait. In this graphic right here with Attia Taylor, who is the founder of Womanly, the founder of, she's a creator. She's a creator of many things, but also founder of the Dorothy part of Strange Parts, the band, a solo musician. There are so many incredible things about her, but as you know, with Let's Care, we dive into the human, we dive into who they are. And I cannot do Attia justice talking about her now. So without further ado, I will introduce her, but I will say for anyone who is watching live, please feel free to use the comment section of wherever you're watching liberally, post any questions or any reactions, and I'll see them as we go along. But again, without further ado, please welcome Attia. Hey, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for the beautiful introduction. I really appreciate that.
No, it's good to have you. And I was just thinking, let's dive into this. But it is great to have you. Great to be talking with you. We first met back when we were both at Second Muse. Mm-hmm. So that was a few years ago, or a couple of years ago or so. But one thing I was always so fascinated by is you just had like this epic journey that you were going on beyond the work itself. I, as someone who creates things, as we could see I like pointing at the graphics apparently, but as we could see with Let's Care, I really resonated with the fact that you were creating Womanly, but there's so much more to you too. And so we're going to dive in and have the conversation for the next hour. But yeah, I just wanted to, first and foremost, like how are you today in the context of this tumultuous world that we're in?
I'm great. Everything is what it is. I'm trying to make the best of the circumstances. I have been in New York City for the most part of the pandemic. I'm currently in Erie visiting my partner's family just to kind of get out of the city. It's been so stressful to just be in New York where nothing's happening and it's very cold. So It's nice to have a nice break. But overall, I'm lucky. I feel very blessed to be able to still work and able to have my health and continue helping others. So I'm good.
Yeah, and as a city person here in Washington, D.C., I'm happy for you because I know what it feels like anytime you get to escape a city in this environment. But I just kind of wanted to start out by giving you just the chance to introduce yourself. How do you introduce yourself, especially with so many things in your life that you're passionate about and working on?
I try to keep it simple. So my name's Attia Taylor, as you know. I'm a musician. I've been playing music for over 10 years now as a solo musician and in multiple bands. My current band is Strange Parts. We're a psych pop trio. And I'm also a content producer I write, I help to visualize and really bring to life stories and narratives that you often don't get to see in mainstream media, especially as it relates to Black and brown women and non-binary people. And just, I love to produce things that make people feel seen and heard. And I love to produce, I'm a huge film nerd and a huge music nerd. So I like to kind of push the boundaries on those things as well, as they relate to health or as they relate to just my weird sensibilities for art.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I think is just like your journey, it's so funny, like when we know people or when we like kind of witness, I'll say, what people are doing and what they're up to, you don't always know like the details of things. And I feel like that's what this this interview and Let's Care is about, that's also something that I was able to get. I was mentioning to you before from your interview in Boom, but I actually just wanted to see if, to talk about that that passion for, like, what I call it is passing the mic to people. Like, where does that come from for you exactly, or how would you sum that up?
That's a great question, and I'm eager to answer it because I've always kind of thought about this part of myself, and I never have really vocalized it before. I think I'm like a walking show and tell. If I see something, I want to show other people. If I hear something cool, I'm like, everyone needs to know about this. So I remember it in kindergarten. We had a show and tell, and I came and I brought my Goofy book, and I was just so hyped and eager to share this book that I had with just Goofy. And like, since then, I've just been trying to share books and art and knowledge and funny things with people. And I especially love to be able to have the platform, to have a space for people to share the things that they're going through in life that maybe they feel like nobody ever cares for or thinks about, like stories about women going through domestic violence or just very individual health issues. Even more in the future, I would like to continue building on this because there's just so many people who just don't feel like they are being listened to or heard or loved or felt and cared for. And I think the work I do with Womanly Magazine has been a place and a community to share and show people that they are heard and seen and cared for and loved, and that we want to hear their stories and that we want to show the world that they exist.
Yeah. And just as we just start this out, it's interesting that we're diving into this because, like, something that I've, like, for whatever reason, people have brought up with me or asked me about lately is, like, how to handle or how to dive into difficult conversations. And I think part of that is in the context of especially, well, not directly related to the murder of George Floyd, but all of the conversations that happened after that, the conversations after the Capitol riots here in DC. And so people have been talking about difficult conversations. And one thing I said to someone was, well, it's not like a difficult conversation or an uncomfortable conversation. It is just like someone else's lived experience. Like, what are some of those, like, lived experiences though that you've shared through Womanly and through just some of the other things that you're creating?
Well, the first thing I thought of was our issue on Black maternal health, which is a huge issue, especially for Black women in this country. Black women are dying in childbirth, and a lot of people don't know that, and we're not talking about it in mainstream media. And when we opened submissions, we wanted specifically Black women to share their stories, and they did. And I'm getting these submissions, and I'm getting these stories from women who nearly died or had were treated with racism in the hospital or had their baby nearly die. And I'm just crying because it's so raw and so real. And I'm like, how could this be uncomfortable? This is someone's life. This is something that, unless it's, triggering or traumatizing, it's important for all of us to experience and understand that this is happening and we need to know in order for us to do something about it. So that had the biggest impact on me of all the content we've ever put out into the world. It was real. And that was on purpose. We wanted to show, we had photography of a home birth, and we had a lot of submissions from Black women who, postpartum or pregnant women. And it was just the realness that I crave out of media that I don't often see.
Like, what were there, like, different reactions that you heard, or was there feedback that you got from readers and community members about what that meant? Because obviously, like, I have my copy of Womanly right here. One of the issues, and by the way, there are Post-it notes all in here marking up different pages and stuff, because I might want to flip to those. But I was just gonna say, like, were there was there feedback or anything in particular that stood out from just putting those stories out there that resonates with you?
Yeah, I mean, we worked with advisors on the issue because we're not experts on this topic, and there's so
Mm,
many great organizations doing this work out there already. So we had experts in adoption, and we had an OBGYN on our advisory board, and just people in the movement doing the work to spread awareness and also help, save lives of Black women and Black babies. So, and Black people as
yeah.
well. So, after putting the issue out, we have had nothing but positive feedback.
Hmm.
We're still delivering the issues out to like health centers and clinics across the country, and women were reaching out saying that it was really helpful for them as they were navigating, being pregnant and going into delivery and wanting to know how to advocate for themselves. I've only received positive feedback from this, and that has been what keeps me going.
Yeah.
That Black women feel like they can trust and rely on the work that we do, or just be able to feel some relief that there are other women out there that have gone through this experience.
Yeah, this is powerful. And like usually I feel like I start with diving more into like your origin story and where you're coming from. And you mentioned like North Philly as part of that. But could you share a little bit for anyone who's listening or watching, like what was that origin story like? I know that a big part of it was like growing up. You mentioned at 7 years old, like being in a boarding school, not the fancy type of boarding school, but the not fancy type of boarding school. And so, like, could you just like share a little bit about that?
Yeah,
And
sure.
where your I'll call them humble beginnings because that sounds fancy. But yeah, where you started out.
Yeah, I was born in Philadelphia, North Philadelphia. My grandparents, both sides, were in East Falls, which is like on the line of North Philly.
Mm,
So I grew up there off of Allegheny, 32nd and Allegheny, and primarily lived with my grandparents.
yeah.
For my mom also lived with us, but was raised by my grandparents. My mother was single and working and going to
Mm,
school, so it was a lot. Me and my sister went to public school for a little while, and my mother was working to kind of make a better life for us. And then this opportunity came along to go to a school that was boarding and private in North Philly, for children with like that were low income or a single parent. And she had us test to get in, me and my sister, and we both got in.
mhm.
So I went when I was about 7 years old to it's called Girard College, and it wasn't far from our house. We went there. We went home on the weekends, and I started third grade. It was really rough. I mean,
Yeah.
as a 7-year old with a bit of dysfunctional household, and I was very anxious and shy. So being alone, so to speak, was rough. I didn't know anyone. It was a bunch of strangers. It was this giant room with all these girls. And I'm like, I don't know
Yeah.
any of you. I don't know what is happening. But as the years went on, the crying stopped, and I got used to it. And it ended up being a really, really positive experience. A good, an education that I wouldn't have gotten had I stayed in public school in Philadelphia. Was able to be in music classes and writing classes, and I had open audience because I had, in my class there were about 30 other girls who were wanting
Yeah.
to do plays and write songs and play sports. So it was a really fun environment for me to grow up in, even though it was tough at times and home life was tumultuous at times as well. But I grew up there, and I feel that I owe a lot of the creativity and the passion I have to being there, to being that person. So I graduated from there in 2007, and I went to Temple,
Mhm.
and I graduated from Temple and came to New York immediately after and interned at Paper magazine. And yeah, and the rest is pretty much history. I mean, I started working at Planned Parenthood, and I'm still at Planned Parenthood, and started Womanly, and yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of steps on the journey, but to
Mm-hmm.
go back, and again, I usually don't come with receipts like this, but like something I keep coming back to that amazing Boom interview, and I would totally encourage people to check that out if they want to like dive deeper into your story, because you just like so beautifully shared so much of your story there. But something that I can definitely relate to that you talked about is, well, number one, like kind of feeling like this, like lonely, you put it, these are not my words, lonely, weird kid without human interaction, which I was like, oh, that sounds familiar,
Mm-hmm.
especially at that age. So like, could you talk a little bit about like what that experience was like? Because one thing that I know that you experienced was like when you're not like always constantly occupying yourself with like in the human interaction, you find ways to fill that time, or like you sink your energy into different things. For you, it sounds like that was like arts and music. And for me, it was probably like a bunch of different things, like reality TV, and like I loved when I was a kid, especially like to watch wrestling and like all of this. So it's like interesting the ways that we fill our time when we kind of have to. But like, what was that like for you, and like where was the transition? To me it sounds like the music scene was part of you becoming less of a, like, you know, to find a community. But I'm curious like just about that part in your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question, and I love these questions. They're so great. And I love
Thank you.
talking about this part of my life because it's so much of who I am right now. And it
Yeah.
has informed a lot of my art. My album that's coming out is so much about this. So, I was a very quiet and shy, introverted kid, unless I was, around my grandma and my grandpa and my sister when I was
Yeah.
wild and crazy. I was very quiet.
Right.
So at home, you know, I was just in my own zone. I think there was a lot going on that was, not quite easy to process as a 6-year-old or 5-year-old.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of that was me trying to process it in my own way. And because my mom was working and out a lot and my grandparents were a lot older, it was like I was on my own a lot. So I got to eat whatever I wanted. I got a lot of snacks and I got a lot of sugar. And that also came with like endless TV time. So
Yeah.
if I wasn't at school, I was in front of the TV. I was
Mhm.
watching cartoons constantly before school, after school, all night long, up until I fell asleep. I'm watching
Yeah.
cartoons. And a lot of that was where I felt the most present with myself. Like I had the food that I really loved, which was
Yeah.
probably Eggo waffles at the time,
Mm. Still love
drowned
them.
in syrup,
Yeah.
and and like Hey Arnold, or Space Ghost, which is what my album
Yeah.
is coming out, is like
Yeah.
one of the shows that would like come on after it was late. So like Adult Swim would come on, and I'd be like, I don't really get this humor, but it's really
Yeah.
it's weird, but I just want to keep watching it. So that informed a lot of who I am. And I do feel that going to boarding school was so intensely sad for me. I was so sad and lonely and wanted to be home and wanted to be around my family, my parents, that I was just always creating a more pleasant world in my brain. So the work you see that I do with the Dorothy is actually named after my grandmother who raised me.
Mm.
And a lot of that work, the visuals that I like to share and create are very much related to the joy that I had to create for myself. That world of wanting things to be better and knowing that they could be better inside of my head. And cartoons were that like refuge, and music became that refuge as well. Listening to like
Yeah.
Disney and really just drowning my sorrows out with content and media
Yeah.
and music. And whether that was like when the Spice Girls came out, I like lost my mind. I was like,
Yeah.
what is this?
Yeah, I was
So
gonna say that sounds really familiar too. So
yeah, I came out when I was like 7, and we only had the music that was on the radio, or like that one music channel that had you could order a song. It was like Will Smith, Miami, and any song that was like in the box office, whatever, the top 10 or something. So I didn't have access to any of the music I listen to right now, but I just kind of I found things that brought me joy, and I leaned into them wholeheartedly. And I still feel like I do that to bring myself sometimes to remember that time in my life, but also just to
mhm.
make myself feel better.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because one thing that I feel like I've heard a lot, especially in the context of the pandemic, is just that a lot of people, to self-soothe, and I heard this especially at the start of the pandemic, that people just like found themselves like eating the snacks that they had as kids, or watching some of this nostalgic shows and things that gave them comfort at that time. So like, you were just saying that you feel like some of that informs you now, but like, what does that look like now for you? Are you still putting on Hey Arnold? Because if you are, I need to know where to watch it, because I love that show. But yeah, like, what does that look like for you now?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, ironically, I cannot watch cartoons anymore. Like I
Yeah,
watch them and I just like I can't stick with it. It
yeah,
doesn't stick in my brain. I try. So I think what helps me now is music, listening to songs that I listened to when I was in high school. I'm still very nostalgic, and I've always been kind of a bit of a sugar addict, so I have a lot of those. I've gotten better for my health, but just food and the pandemic has created a bit of a distance between me and my family, which is rough. But
hmm,
leaning into being around my sister, who I grew up with, and her kids, who remind me of me and her growing up. So yeah, I don't think there's a lot of ways to connect with that person, but through my art, I do. Like the music I make, the album that I have coming out is very much connected to that person that I was. But otherwise, I just I try to tap into it through music and being with my family, and being alone also helps as well. Just being with myself and my thoughts and writing,
yeah.
that really connects me.
Yeah, yeah, like, to that idea of being alone, because something that like really fascinates me, like, I don't even like, when it comes to being an introvert and an extrovert, for a while I was like, oh, I'm an extrovert. And then I realized, like, oh, I am actually really an introvert. Like, even having one-on-one conversations like
Mhm.
this is a lot different than like being in a group or in a room or whatever that looks like. But the thing that stood out to me, and this is the first time I will be flipping to my post-it note. Sorry, it doesn't look pretty, but I'm sorry. But I was like really fascinated, because I think a lot of people who are introverts, like, really, I mean, myself included, I guess, like, we just have a harder time reaching out to people and connecting with people. And yet, like, literally through Womanly, you have like 50 volunteers supporting what you're doing. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is wild to look at. Like, how did you get to that point where, like, have you always felt comfortable reaching out, and just feel like, because you mentioned being a weird kid, and like, oh, this is who I am, accept it? Or was it difficult to get to that point? Or was there a journey to get to the point, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, it would, I've always been very introverted, but I've also been very passionate at the same time.
Mm,
And so those two things would fight against each other a lot. And it wasn't until I started therapy that
yeah.
it became more clear that I needed to be on medication for
Hmm.
my anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
So I'm in therapy. I've been in therapy for like every week for the last 5 years since I was in New
Hmm.
York. maybe longer actually, because I've been in New York 8 years. So probably the last 7 years, maybe.
Good for you. Good for
And that
you.
was the work. That was the work that I
Yeah.
needed to do because I knew, oh, I want to, you can't start a magazine without feeling like, obviously if I had boatloads of money, that would be different, but I didn't. All I had was my network, my people skills, and my passion. So I couldn't tap into that without kind of healing a lot of that pain, a lot of those things I carried. And I didn't have room for a magazine with all the baggage that I had from my childhood. So
Yeah.
going to therapy really changed that. And I love my therapist. And she, I was very resistant to getting on medication because I wanted to
Yeah.
feel like myself. But since I've, worked with a psychiatrist, the point is to make you feel more like yourself and make you feel more whole. And I've been on these meds for a while, maybe 6 years, and I feel like I couldn't do what I did without them. Honestly,
Yeah.
they gave me a life that I didn't even have before. They made me feel like I could do things, that I could be brave, without the anxiety of wondering what's going to happen or why I'm not good enough. And so once I, felt in a good place, I reached out to a lot of friends and family about this project I had, and it just kind of snowballed. That's
Yeah.
where all those people are, just friends of friends, and now there's just people reaching out. So
Yeah, you know what? The thing that and thank you for sharing that first and foremost. I'm sure there are other people who are listening or who will listen who that resonates with because that's their experience too, right? But I mean, like taking meds and or even going to therapy and realizing like I do need help is an important step. Like for me, I talk a lot about like grief and my grief experience and going to grief therapy and being in a group and in a community because to your point, like these are not difficult conversations. These are not conversations that should be hidden. They're conversations we need to have because like someone might look at you and say, I want to be like Attia, like I want to be able to create a magazine, I want to be in a band and put music out. But when they don't see those little like those challenges or those bumps in the road or those things like taking care of your mental health. I was just saying this to someone the other day, like they then run into that and they think something's wrong with them because they're not able to make a magazine or they're not able to like perform in the band without those just their mental health and the struggles with mental health and experiences and trauma being things that come up. And I wish more people would share those elements of their story because it's like nothing to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of. That takes a lot of strength to go out and like actually ask for help in multiple kinds of ways. Yeah, I'm like curious to hear your thoughts on that.
yeah, it was really I had a point in college where I had lost a friend to mental illness, and really impacted me to a point where I wasn't able to be in school. I wasn't present. I was having, you know, mental breakdowns around, losing this person who was the most important to me, and this
Yeah,
grief kind of overtook my life. So my
yeah,
mother was like, yeah, you need to go to therapy. And I didn't think twice about it at the time. I mean, I just didn't know what else to do. And I don't want people to have to get to this point of breakdown to think that they have to go to therapy then. Therapy is, I like to say, it's like a diary that talks back to you. Like, you don't have to feel a
beautiful.
burden of telling this person something and that they're going to hold it against you or go and tell someone. It's like, get it off your chest. And then once it's like digging and digging, it's like cleaning a scab and then watching it heal. The person I was 5 years ago when I started therapy is just the most, the most different person that it's way different than I am now. So I think, it is a privilege. I have insurance. I have a job that provides insurance. I have a really amazing therapist that it took me a while to find. So yes, it's definitely a journey, and it might be hard to find the right person, but when you do, it's really rewarding. It's really rewarding for you, and it's also really a benefit for the people around you. You start to attract people who are more or healthier for you, and you start to feel more whole and like yourself. And your dreams become more tangible and way more in focus because you have so cleared so much of that out of your way. It's really quite beautiful experience to be able to say I need help and to be vulnerable, to be raw and to be vulnerable with someone else and feel trust for that person. So
Yeah, and you kind of like touched on sort of one thing that I was like going toward, which is just how like even as I flip through this edition of the magazine, I wonder how you like how almost how you what effect you feel like not just therapy like in terms of that actual practice, but more generally like taking care of yourself. I'm curious how that's informed Womanly Magazine. But before even getting to that answer from you, you know, like something that I found is so powerful. Someone a few weeks ago messaged me and I wasn't even really thinking about like normalizing grief or talking about grief in what I was doing. I was just sharing because that's what I've conditioned for myself. Like it's normal to share. I find myself in staff meetings at work talking about my grief, right? But it's powerful because even me sharing, like, I mean, like you just shared your experience and I wouldn't have known about your experience. And, this is like the power of conversation, but also the power of vulnerability and just being like, here's who I am and where I am. But, I really want to ask about, again, how, putting in all this work with yourself has informed the magazine, because something that's blown my mind is like, this magazine is magical. It is like, it's interesting because it's like it's not only an expression of art, but it feels like diving into this is, I mean, maybe it's not going to therapy, but like this is like definitely touching on a lot of things that could improve people's lives, improve how people interact with themselves. And there, I'll just say like specifically, and this is probably where all of my other like post-its come in, but like in looking at the magazine, I was inspired by the fact that like, yes, it's Womanly Magazine and you like have a target audience for your magazine, but I feel like everyone needs to get this and read this, because like I'm looking at a page now that is on like we're trying to get this together. If anyone's listening to audio, I'm sorry about that. But this is the page on diabetes and sugar, for instance, and like my best friend has type 1 diabetes. So to like create an awareness and understanding of that for someone for people is so powerful, because a lot of people don't know the difference between type 1 and type 2 and gestational diabetes. And then for me personally, like there's stuff on food allergies in this one, and I have multiple food allergies, including tree nuts and peanuts. And I just feel like so supported by this magazine and what you've created. But yeah, like how has your practice like fed into all of this? And I'm gonna put the magazine down, but people should definitely pick it up. People should definitely pick it up.
Yeah, I think it goes back, and thank you for those really nice
Yeah.
words. I think it goes back to that show and tell thing for part of it. I mean, I've been doing a lot of work on myself, and for the longest time, I've wanted people to feel the benefits of taking care, wanted people to feel the benefits of, releasing their stress and burdens and, you know, really feeling free of that trauma that we walk around with because we were abused or we were abandoned or we were, lonely or something. We made a mistake 20 years ago. I want people to feel good and healthy and happy. And I especially look at my family where, we've been for a long time been, we're not allowed to talk about our pain. We're not allowed to cry in front of strangers or, we just kind of stoic people. And while that has been, an interesting part of my personality, it has also been, it has, contributed to unhealthy lifestyles. So I'm just very pro talking about your issues with someone you can trust. And I really just want people to, I just want people to get information, if wherever, I know it exists somewhere, but why can't it exist here too? And I don't want it to be such a hard thing to find. Like, I shouldn't be able to have to go into the doctor's office with, you know, I shouldn't be going to ER, for heart palpitations or something to learn about heart health or heart issues. I should know what I'm predisposed to. I should know what my risk factors are. I should know these things. I should know when my tests come. Why don't we know these things without having, we go to our doctor for a problem we have? But a lot of the times we don't know why we need to be within a certain range for our blood pressure or things like that. So it's really just my need to show people things, my show and tell. And I love art, and I thought, this is a great way to get people excited and interested. So I think Womanly has been, I'm really happy and grateful for that huge team you see, because they made this possible. They saw the vision I was going after, and they saw the need too, the disparities for communities of color, especially, and just low income folks who don't have access to insurance. Like, where can we fill these gaps? And we're still challenging ourselves and still trying to find ways to make this more accessible, whether it's donating magazines or creating new programs, anything we can, honestly, just to get people the care and health information they need.
Yeah, one of the things I think is so interesting about that is just that Womanly and the Dorothy and just everything that you're doing, but even more everything you are, it exists in the same world, in the same bubble. And the thing that I'm curious about, thinking about Space Ghost and thinking about your music in particular, your solo music in particular, is the timing of it, because obviously it's coming in the middle of such a turbulent time for the world, right? And I'm really curious about like the why behind it, or like why now's the time for Space Ghost, which again, as I said to you beforehand, I have listened to about 10 times this week. So yeah, why now?
That makes me happy. I mean, it's not even a now thing. I've been working on this for so long. I recorded, actually almost a year ago, I recorded the album.
Wow.
And it's just taken a long time to get everything prepared, and it's being mixed and being mastered. And I wrote the songs. I mean, this is a collection of songs that I've written over the last 5 or 6 years, maybe more. So I do, there's like, I've wanted to put this album out much sooner, but this is the way it's gone. So my fingers are crossed for getting it out into the world, the full thing this year. It's very beautiful and I'm proud of it. But the time, I do believe in timing. I think if it's going to come out this year or next year, that's what the world needed, or that's what I needed. So I'm not being too hard on myself about it, but I would like to get it done.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and it's funny because that totally resonates with me, because in June 2019, I was in the San Francisco Bay Area making a film, and like I'm finally very soon going to be sharing that with people and like putting it out into the world more broadly. But it does feel good to get it done. And timing is really everything, because sometimes you can't plan. Well, you can try to plan the timing for things, but like in a lot of ways, you also can't. And when it comes to creativity and art, like you can't rush it. You can't rush art, which I think is a cliche, but it's so true. And so that it resonates with me. But something that I was thinking about a little bit beforehand, a lot beforehand, actually, just in terms of you and your story, and your experiences was like I don't know like what the right word is. The word unicorn came to mind, for instance, like, and I feel like this a lot in my own experiences where it's like you go out and you're yeah, I mean, for better or worse, you know, you might be the only one of you in the room. And you know, I'm kind of curious because you've had like this very artistic, unique, weird, but weird in like such a positive, beautiful way. I think weird is definitely an underrated word here, but like weird journey. Like, were there moments that, or is there a moment that stands out when you've like experienced the tension between you and how you approach the world and how you see the world as a creator, and like the establishment which says you should be a certain way? Is there like a moment that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of
Mhm.
moments, especially
Yeah.
as a musician. I think, I've been playing music, which is psych pop. It's different. It's never been something you could easily put on a normal radio station, which I love, but
Yeah.
it's, the industry, the scene, the music scene that I'm in is very white, it's very male, and I've been a lot of times the only person of color in the room, sometimes the only woman in the room, most times the only Black woman in the room.
Yeah.
So it's definitely has been an uphill battle continuing to make this music and believing in it and putting it out. And I'm lucky to have friends and folks in my corner around music who still believe in the music I make or are still fans and listen. And I love making music. It feels so much a part of me, but it scares me all the time to think about how much I'm up against in terms of putting things out. I do hope that my ability to be this weirdo unicorn, um,
Yeah.
whatever it is that I am, can help people understand that this is the real thing. That this is who I am, and I've never been able to put on a persona. I've never been able to do that. I've just been able to, like, a lot of my music is when I was a kid finding stuff around the house because we didn't have
Mhm.
money for instruments. So I put some rice between two cups. I'm gonna do whatever.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
I like making something out of nothing, and I like bending sound. I like making things my own way, and that doesn't always come with having like this crazy music education course or being perfect at piano or something, but it's mine, and it's a thing that I created, and it feels right and good to me. So if someone can resonate with it can resonate with what I'm doing, then I'm happy to still be doing it.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I know I can, and that's something where like back to where you even started with the experience of like being in a band or being a performer, and again being the only one of you in the room, which like sometimes as a quick aside, like I talk about that, but I wish like white people and white men, like white cisgender people, understood just what that's like to be the only one of you in the room, like truly, but not only once or like once in a while, but like constantly in so many different ways. Like you talked through something that I think through and try to talk about more and more, which is that like, you know, you could go into a room and be like the only artist or only musician. You could go into the room and be the only young person. You could go into the room and be the only woman or the only Black woman, or like, you know, and there are all of these different experiences, I feel like, that are just kind of like normalized for us. And I actually wish I wasn't even, this is totally the conversation where I'm like, I had no clue that we were going to go to this place. But just like, I wish that people like, I know that they'll recognize when we are the only one in the room, obviously, because we stand out to them. But like to people who are not in like in different, who from people who are in the majority as well, I'll say. But I wish that more people would like take it seriously and like fight and advocate for like us to actually have more of a sense of belonging and community, and to not feel like we're the special one, you know, but like that they're like that we are accepted and people like us are accepted. But I'm just like definitely open. I don't even have a question out of that. Just like open to your reactions there too.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's normalized that I'm just used to it, right? I've played many, many shows over the years, and you get used to it. You you just do your thing. You try not to worry about it, and you expect it. But I do think it's being looked at in a new light, like it's being challenged, and that's not just music. That's in everything, right?
Right.
In every industry, we're looking at why there are no Black people in the room. Why are there no Black women in the room? Why are we downplaying, their our abilities and our talents? Why are women paid less? So we're really in this new world of, you know, Black Lives Matter and post pandemic, or hopefully
Yeah.
post pandemic,
One day.
looking at ourselves in the mirror and also looking at ourselves through camera phones and through police brutality, and really, not just saying, oh my God, that's awful, but like, how do I uphold a system that allows this to happen? And that's everyone, So I think we're moving towards more accountability. I don't know how close we are, because there's still a lot of injustices, and there's, as you mentioned, the Capitol riots were just this year, and where's the accountability? So, we still have a long way to go. I mean, half of our country voted for a racist president.
Yeah.
So I don't, I'm not gonna say it's time, the time is now, but I do really feel like the Me Too movement, and this the fight for prison abolition, and there's so many movements happening, and I do think we're mobilizing. We're mobilizing, especially on social media. They're Stacey Abrams is a boss, and
Right.
we're making it happen. It's not going to be overnight, but we are pushing, and we will not stop. And I know that.
Yeah, and I like, just to build on that, one thing that I know is that it's not going to be, we or like our ancestors even, and oh man, it's wild to even talk about ancestors like in this context, because like they are not like, that's like my parents and like grandparents and great grandparents, like people who were like, that was not that long ago that we had a lot of like very despicable, serious injustices, or blatant injustices, I'll call them, because we still have a lot of those today. But it's not going to be on us only to solve those problems, and we need like allies and other people to get on board. One thing I was thinking about in reading Womanly Magazine was that, like, one of my pet peeves personally, so like going back about 10 years now, 10 years ago, actually, like this spring, I got involved in sexual assault awareness and activism and like education, and on my college campus. And then at, just since then, I've been involved and done talks and workshops. But one of my big things, and maybe this is because I'm a man, but it's been like, okay, but we need to get the men in the room. Like, this is not, like it's not like a quote unquote women's issue in the sense that like only women should care about this and get involved in this. Like, men need to be involved. And so this is kind of why I was saying earlier, like, people need to pick up the magazine and learn about these experiences and read, and also normalize different people's experiences, by educating themselves. But I guess like the thing that I'm curious from you is like, thinking about those people who are not from those marginalized groups, like, do you have a message for those people? Like, I don't know if it's like, what are they doing wrong or what it is, but yeah, I'm curious if you have a message for those people, who you want to get on board with pushing the change forward in these different ways.
Yeah, and that's tough, because I don't know the answer to
Yeah.
giving people to helping people understand the trials and tribulations of being a transgender person.
No.
I don't know how to instill empathy in people. All I can do is continue sharing what we go through, what marginalized folks go through. I will say that, we are all being used in a lot of ways through capitalism. When you mistreat women, you're also a victim. You're a victim of being a part of this system that doesn't value human life. So you think, it's beneficial or you're not doing anything wrong, but actually we all are victims of a system that prioritizes capitalism and white supremacy. And then that trickles down in so many ways. But if we really want to create a better life for our children and our children's children, then we need to start listening and understanding other people's struggles. I've seen a disgusting amount of transphobia take place for people I know from my past or just in my networks. And, as much as I can like scream and like lose my breath trying to say like, this is wrong, you just have those people who don't want to see it or benefit from not seeing it. And so I don't know the answer, but I will say that I'm going to keep trying and, hope that one day people will see, people will understand and help out and not criticize and, turn their nose up.
Yeah, I mean, and that is the answer because that's your answer, right? And I think one thing that that I definitely also want to discourage is because I've had it too, where people will like come to me for the answer on how to solve their problem when it comes to race, whether that's a diversity question or like inclusion and equity and justice and whatever. And like that's, I have we have perspectives on that, right? Especially as people who create content that's meant for like to really amplify underrepresented experiences and voices. But at the same time, I I love I need to mention her more in interviews. There's someone who I interviewed a few years ago, back in 2018 for the first time, and then in the 20s and Change San Francisco film in June 2019 for a panel, Precious J. Stroud, who's the creator of this thing called the Black Female Project. And basically, and it's something that will be in the film, but she basically says, like, you need to stop asking Black women to do so much to solve your problems, like figure it out. And like, that is something that I want people to understand, that like, even if we have like we have opinions and we have perspectives, like it's not our job. It's everyone's job to like get involved, and especially people who are part of the problem, whatever that looks like. It's their job to be part of the solution and engage and get hands-on. So I'm glad that you're like creating pathways for that through just all that you're putting out into the world. But I want to like start to wind down. And we've been talking about like publications and things that you create so much that I want to ask one of my final questions, which is about your story. And the question is, if your life were a book or documentary, what would the title be and why?
My life were a book or a documentary, what would the title be? This is a tough one.
Think about it for a second.
So I have this song on my album. It's called The Mildest Winter, and it's like WINNER, The Mildest Winter.
Yeah.
I just think that would be pretty funny because I like comedy quite a bit, and I like making fun of myself in my life. And I think because I'm doing so well in my life, but I'm also still just so humble and very much kind of a homebody and an introvert. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. So probably mildest winter, the story of Attia Taylor, maybe.
That says so much about you, though, too, because I mean, I have like asked 100 plus people that question, and everyone has different answers and definitely different reasons why they have that answer. But gotta say, like, I'm sure that there are other, like, there's at least one other answer that contrasts with that, where it's like, it says so much about you, that title. And it also reminds me, like, that's one reason I really wanted to interview you, other than, like, I mean, I always look at these interviews, I think first and foremost it's admittedly like selfish in the sense that I want to learn and have the conversation and dive in and then capture it to even come back to, because this conversation lives on, right? But I think the other piece of it too is that we need to like pass the mic to more people who aren't either handed the mic or that aren't grabbing the mic or have more to say into it because of time limits and all those other analogies that you can make with the mic. But I want to ask one more difficult question that is about who would write the foreword of your book, because I always think it's so important to like to celebrate where we come from and people who support us. But who is it, like who would you ask, if it's someone you know or anyone that comes to mind really, who would you want to write the foreword for that book and why? And maybe it's a documentary, so not I don't know the analogy exactly yet for the documentary, but
Well, two people come to mind. One is for my past and my history. I'd say my sister. We grew up together. She knows who I am inside and out. She just understands me, and we call ourselves. We're not twins, but we are so close that we call ourselves twins. So I know she would do me justice. And I do, my other friend Mario. I've been friends with him for a long time, and we're creative. We're very much, aligned creatively. We work together on projects all the time, and I really do think he understands the work that I do and the art that I put out there. And he's an amazing filmmaker, so I do think he would do me justice.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, and we got those shout outs in, but we're just focusing more on shout outs for you. Where could people learn more or follow your journey? Please feel free to like plug everything and anything right now, because I know there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that I have going on is Womanly Mag, at Womanly Mag on all social, at thedorothy.co on social, mostly Instagram. And then you can find me at attiataylor.com or at Attia on Insta. That all my stuff is there. I'm on Spotify, Attia Taylor. Yeah. So look.
Yeah, definitely. And we're closing this out in a very like I'll say unorthodox. I like that word. Unorthodox way, just by actually sharing your song Space Ghost to kind of wrap us up. And we definitely need to connect again. I don't know if it will be a stream. I don't know if it will be a conversation, probably a conversation at least, I'm sure. But before even getting to just sharing Space Ghost and playing that, I want to see if there's anything else you just want to say and share that's on your heart. Go any direction. This is your time.
I mean, I just want to thank you for creating this space, and it's wonderful to chat, and you're such a great interviewer. I mean, I've interviewed many people, and this is not easy to do in a way that makes people feel like they can be open, and you've done that, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate you bringing me on, and I'm so grateful to have worked with you, although it was a short time.
Right.
I do hope we can collaborate or speak again in this way. I'm sure we will.
We will. So
thank you.
No, thank you. And just before even playing the song, is there anything you want to say to cue it up before I hit that outro, that outro music, about Space Ghost, about your music, anything in particular?
No, just that this song is available on Spotify and iTunes, and I'll be having an album coming out pretty soon. So look out for it.
Look, this song is growing on me a lot. So thank you, Attia. We'll talk again soon. But as I say at the end of each of my interviews, keep impacting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you